Can melatonin help with cognitive decline and Alzheimer's disease? While small doses of melatonin make you fall asleep, they may have little to no other effect. How about high doses of melatonin? With Alzheimer's disease on the rise in all industrialized countries, this disease will soon become the number 3 disease in terms of people affected after heart disease and cancer. What impact can high doses of melatonin possibly have? 1. High doses of melatonin get rid of all the heavy metals in your brain. Heavy metals, especially aluminum, are the main problem when we talk about Alzheimer's. 2. High doses of melatonin are the best antioxidant there is, much better than the master antioxidant glutathione. Have a listen.
Glutathione is the main antioxidant in the brain, and if you want to protect the brain, and then all of us injected the hell out of people, and we saw very little progress in our Alzheimer's patients and the sick patients. And then the literature started emerging a far more important detox agent and anti-inflammatory for the intracellular component of our cells in the body was melatonin. And the melatonin on its own has strong antiviral effects. Antimicrobials are used for sepsis. One of the most deadly human conditions is sepsis, and it beautifully stops that. With COVID-19, I advised several physicians that run emergency departments in large hospitals, in Saudi Arabia and Australia and other places. And people that followed my advice, they had virtually a 0 death rate by including melatonin against the so-called cytokine storm that nobody really knows if that really exists or not, but that dive that COVID patients took, at least initially when the virus was more aggressive. And so melatonin has a huge plethora of effects. But when you Google, when you put in melatonin and mercury, you find out that it basically undoes the lethal effects of mercury instantly. When you Google aluminum and melatonin, same thing. Glyphosate and aluminum, glyphosate and melatonin. So melatonin has really like a huge range of spectra of things that it does.
3. High doses of melatonin decalcify the pineal gland. As Dr. Edinger points out, a decalcified pineal gland will extend a person's lifespan by decades, as animal studies have proven. 4. High doses of melatonin are the best anti-inflammatory there is. There are thousands of studies published on PubMed. You might ask yourself, how about the plaques in the brain everybody is referring to when they talk about Alzheimer's? The plaques in the brain are not the real cause of Alzheimer's. This is the opinion of Professor Bayer, a well-known Alzheimer researcher from Germany. Maybe plaques are responsible for only 10%, he says. The other 90% is inflammation of the brain. This is why plaque medications do not improve the patient's condition at all. Have a listen. Professor Bayer is not alone in his view. There is also a scientist from Canada who has been researching Alzheimer's disease for decades. He comes to the same conclusion, since he found so-called microglia in the brain cells of Alzheimer's patients, a clear indication for inflammation.
There's a tiny silver lining here. The question arises, should people who are not affected with rheumatism use anti-inflammatories in order to protect themselves from Alzheimer's? Based on what we know about the human brain and what we have learned in the non-study, my conclusion is, you bet they should.
So if these scientists are right, that Alzheimer's is an inflammation of the brain, would it then not make sense to use the best anti-inflammatory there is, namely high doses of melatonin? When people start with high doses of melatonin as patches or suppositories, some people report a slight headache. This is the process of detoxification in the brain. Later in the process, it is not unusual for rheumatism or any other inflammatory condition to vanish. Professor Pat McGeer from Canada did the following. He called up most of the big rheumatism clinics and asked them if they had any records of patients having Alzheimer's disease. He could not find any.
Pat McGeer has engaged himself in a kind of detective's work. He begins calling rheumatory specialists worldwide, asking whether among their patients there are also those with Alzheimer's. You say you don't have any such cases of treating people who have developed dementia. Thank you very much. But some cases must exist where patients also got Alzheimer's. In the beginning of his research, he can hardly believe it. Among the big rheumatoid clinics worldwide, there is almost no one who has seen an older patient with Alzheimer's. Dr. Chalmers, I've been advised to give you a call. Do you have any records about rheumatoid patients in your clinic who have also developed Alzheimer's? Again, nothing. But he knows a telephone inquiry will not be accepted as scientific data. What he needs is documented data. He has to find a doctor who has collected the data of patients about rheumatoid arthritis and all of their other ailments. Finally, he is lucky. He has found someone. You have records? That's wonderful. Thank you very much. You will hear from me soon.
Since rheumatism patients get their daily doses of anti-inflammatories, Alzheimer's was not an issue in those clinics. Professor Bayer in Germany from Göttingen University managed to create mice with Alzheimer's disease. These mice could not find their way out of a pool of water because they had lost all orientation.
Alzheimer mice can recall better after they have taken anti-inflammatory medicines. That is what our experiment showed. But this argument to find a suitable cure for the disease is obviously not good enough, because the pharmaceutical industry does not show any interest in that.
By giving them anti-inflammatories with their daily food, the same mice could soon find their way out of the pool. But wait, there is more proof that Alzheimer's is not caused by plaques. The most convincing proof is the nun study. In this over 25-year study, nuns have agreed to donate their brains for examination after they had been diseased, just for the cause of Alzheimer's research. The nuns were perfect because they lived in the same environment, ate the same food each day, and did not smoke or drink. They went to bed early each night. No late-night parties, nothing. On top of that, each nun had to do some cognitive tests on a weekly basis. Some elder nuns, like Nun Bernadette or Nun Mattia, even got better in their tests the older they became. When their time came, and they died of old age or heart disease, their brains were examined. The scientists were shocked by what they saw. Their brains were full of plaques. But these nuns were clear and sharp in their minds, as their last test results showed. These incidents could be observed over and over again. These are the results of the nun study. Professor Pat McGeer was asking the pharmaceutical industry to produce a new anti-inflammatory medication for Alzheimer's and to follow the latest scientifically proven results. But according to his own comment, they were not much interested, because their plaque remedy has been patented and is highly profitable. For many scientists, it is clear. Alzheimer's is not a disease of plaques, but an inflammation of the brain, most probably triggered by heavy metal accumulation, especially aluminum. Wouldn't it make sense then to use the best anti-inflammatory and the best remedy that can discharge heavy metals from your brain? And that is melatonin, especially in high doses. Even as a non-Alzheimer patient, you will feel the clarity of mind, the calmness, and the power of thinking within a few days. There are many studies about melatonin being highly antidepressive, meaning it targets your brain and its abilities directly. But we go even one step further and say that all cognitive abilities improve, such as learning, thinking, judgment, and also your mood. You think you are not exposed to aluminum that much? Think again. Have a deep look inside your tuna can, or any other canned food for that matter. Think about the pan or wok pan the Chinese cook uses when he prepares your favorite Chinese dish. Think about chemtrails, which are real and not a conspiracy. And here's an obscure one you certainly have never thought of before. Think about the crematories in your city. As Dr. Klinghardt reports, this is a very hidden source of aluminum too. Aluminum does not dissolve in anything. Once a body burns, the aluminum inside that body goes literally through the roof. It goes down just for some other person to breathe it in. Aluminum is everywhere, and it is one of the most toxic poisons for our brains. In this sense, high doses of melatonin are the antidote, and have been proven on all four accounts mentioned earlier how it can deal with this dreadful disease, which is called Alzheimer's. In conclusion, we have the greatest brain detoxifier, the best anti-inflammatory, and the #1 tool that can decalcify your pineal gland, and the best antioxidant in the world, all in one remedy, and that is high doses of melatonin. Preferably taken as suppositories or patches, otherwise it will not stay long in your system. We could not ask for more. We close this important chapter with a quote from Professor Reiter, who has spent decades of his life on the research of high doses of melatonin. He is 85 years old, his mind is sharp, and he has been using high doses of melatonin for over 28 years on a daily basis. In a recent interview, he said that he has nothing, no age-related disease whatsoever, and all his colleagues who do the same have nothing too. Given his popularity around the world as the #1 melatonin researcher, what do you think how many colleagues he has? Thanks for watching.